Your 5.5 lesson covers adding, subtracting, and multiplying matrices. When you add and subtract matrices, you need the same exact dimensions in order to do so. So we're going to start with that. We're also going to look at distribution with matrices. So if you're multiplying a matrix by a specific number, we're going to look at that as well. So again, your matrices have to be equal to one another in dimension in order for you to add or subtract them. So for instance, if you had two matrices like these two on the left, the 2, -1, square root 4, 1/2, this is a 2 by 2. Your one on the right is that 2, -1, 2, 0.5 is also a 2 by 2. The numbers inside each of those matrices also simplify to be the numbers in the right matrix. So you could add these if you needed to. You could have also subtracted them if you needed to. However, the matrix of 2, -1, 3, 4, 0, 0 is not equal to 2, -1, 3, 4. That first one on the left is a 3 by 2. The one on the right is a 2 by 2. So you would not be able to add or subtract these. The first examples that we're going to look at is adding matrices. When you add or subtract matrices, you are going to combine the numbers that are in the same position for each matrix. So for example A, you're given -1, 2, 0, 1, plus 1, 3, -1, 2. So in order to add these, you are going to take that -1, add it with the +1 in the matrix to the right. So it's the top left plus top left. Then you'll do your 2 and your 3. You'll add together. So that's going to be 2 plus 3. Then your next is 0 and -1. And 1 and 2. We're going to combine this. So that -1 plus 1 is 0. 2 plus 3 is 5. 0 plus -1 is -1. And 1 plus 2 is 3. For example B, you have 1, -3, -2, plus -1, 3, 2. So you are going to add the 1 with the -1, the -3 with the 3, and the -2 with the 2. So we combine to get the matrix 0, 0, 0. Now, we were able to add these last two examples because your dimensions for each of those matrices are exactly the same. For example A, you have a 2 by 2 plus a 2 by 2. For example B, you have a 3 by 1 plus a 3 by 1. If we look at example C, it tells you to find the sum of A and B. A is that 2, 1, 0, 4, 0, -1. This matrix has dimensions of a 2 by 3. B is that 0, 1, -1, 3. That matrix has the dimensions of a 2 by 2. These two dimensions are not identical, so you have no solution for something like this. For your next example, we are doing 3 times A. When you multiply something into a matrix, you can just multiply all of the terms within the matrix by that number. In this case, that 3 times A means you're going to multiply all 9 of those numbers inside your matrix by that 3. So that means you're going to do 3 times 2, 3 times 2, 3 times 4, 3 times -3, 3 times 0, 3 times -3 times -1, 3 times 2, 3 times +1, and 3 times 2. This is going to give you the matrix of 6, 6, 12, negative 9, 0, negative 3, 6, 3, 6. If we keep going with this, it reminds you that your dimensions must be the same in order for you to add or subtract. Your next example that you are going to work with is 3 times the sum of negative 2, 0, 4, 1, and 4, negative 2, 3, 7. You could do this one of two ways. You can either distribute that 3 into both of those matrices, or you can add the two matrices and then distribute the 3 into your answer. It does not matter which method you choose, you will get the same answer. If we distribute that 3 in first, you're going to do 3 times the negative 2, 0, 4, 1, plus 3 times 4, negative 2, 3, 7. The 3 times negative 2 is, the 3 is going to multiply by the negative 2, the 0, the 4, and the 1. The other 3 will also multiply by the 4, negative 2, 3, and 7. So this will give us 6, 0, 12, 3 for the first matrix, plus 12, negative 6, 9, 21. So now we're going to do the 6 plus the 12, the 0 plus the negative 6, and the 12 plus the 9, as well as the 3 plus the 21. This will give us 18, negative 6, 21, and 24. So if we look back at the beginning, this was a negative 2, not a positive 2. So this should have been 3 times negative 2, which is negative 6. So negative 6 plus 12 is what you've had next, making this a 6. For our next example, we're finding the difference of 2 times A minus 4 times B. So we're going to do 2 times the matrix of 2, 3, 0, negative 1, 4, negative 2, minus 4 times the matrix of negative 3, 4, 2, 0, 1, negative 5. So that means we are going to do 2 times 2, 2 times 3, 2 times 0, 2 times negative 1, 2 times 4, and 2 times negative 2. That negative 4 gets distributed in to that second matrix, so it's going to be negative 4 times negative 3, negative 4 times 4, negative 4 times 2, negative 4 times 0, negative 4 times 1, and negative 4 times negative 5. The 2 times 2 from the first matrix is 4. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. In the second matrix, you have negative 4 times negative 3, which is 12. Negative 4 times 4, which is negative 16. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. Negative 4 times 0 is 0. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. And negative 4 times negative 5 is positive 20. From here, we will add. So we're going to do the 4 plus the 12, the 6 plus the negative 16, the 0 plus the negative 8, the negative 2 plus the 0, the 8 plus the negative 4, and the negative 4 plus the 20. Your 4 plus 12 is 16. 6 plus negative 16 is negative 10. 0 plus negative 8 is negative 8. Negative 2 plus 0 is negative 2. 8 plus negative 4, or 8 minus 4, is 4. And negative 4 plus 20, or 20 minus 4, is 16. Our next example tells us to solve the equation for x. We're given 3x plus a is equal to b. You can work this one of two ways. You could either solve for x within the equation first and then do whatever it tells you to, or you can plug in your matrices for a and b and work with them in there. I'd rather solve for x from the equation first. If we do that, we're going to move that a over by subtracting it from both sides. That'll give us 3x is equal to b minus a. From there, we're going to divide each side by the 3. So that'll give us x is equal to 1/3 times b minus a. So the first thing we're going to find is b minus a. You're going to do the negative 3, 4, 2, 1, minus the 1, negative 2, 0, 3. So this tells us we're doing negative 3 minus 1, 4 minus negative 2, 2 minus 0, and 1 minus 3. To simplify this, we're going to have negative 4, 6, 2, negative 2. Now that's just b minus a. We were asked to find 1/3 times that. So if we do 1/3 times b minus a, that's going to be 1/3 times negative 4, 6, 2, negative 2. We'll distribute that 1/3 in and multiply by all 4 of those numbers. So it's going to be 1/3 times negative 4, 1/3 times 6, 1/3 times 2, and 1/3 times negative 2. This then simplifies to give us negative 4/3, 2, 2/3, and negative 2/3. So continuing with your notes for 5.5, we're going to move into multiplication of matrices. When you multiply two matrices together, you need to look at the dimensions of your matrices. If you can multiply your matrices, your dimensions have to have the two inner dimensions be the same. So like, for example, if you had a 3/2 multiplied by a 2/4, because these two 2's are the same, you can multiply them, and the outer parts of the dimensions will be your answer dimensions. So for this, if your 2's in the middle are the same, your 3 and 4 would give you a 3/4 as your answer. If we look at an example, in order to multiply these, you're not just looking at the dimensions of the matrix to see what you're doing. But once you look at that and you can tell that your two middle parts of your dimensions are the same and the outer gives you your answer, you are going to multiply the top row by the first column, added with the top row times the second column, added with the top row times the third column, and so on. You will then move down to the second row. So multiply second row by first column, plus the second row multiplied by the second column, plus the second row multiplied by the third column. Then lastly, you'll move down to the last row, multiply your last row with your first column, plus the last row times your second column, plus the last row times your third column. Each time you do this, this gives you a different number within your matrix. So, for this example, you're finding the product of A times B using A, which is the matrix 2, 1, negative 1, 0, 3, negative 2, and B, which is 4, 0, 3, negative 2, 1, 2. So your first matrix is a 3 by 2. Your second matrix is a 2 by 3. Your two middle terms are the same, so we can multiply these. Your answer is going to be a 3 by 3. So we're going to look at first row, first column. So we're going to go first row, first column. You're going to do 2 times 4 plus 1 times negative 2. Whatever you get from that will be the first term in your matrix answer. Next, you'll go first row times middle column added together. So that's the 2 times 0 plus 1 times 1. Next, you'll go first row, third column. So that's 2 times 3 plus 1 times 2. So that'll give you your answers for all 3 numbers in the first row of your answer matrix. Next, you'll move to the middle row. So it'll be middle row, first column to start. It's going to be negative 1 times 4 plus 0 times negative 2. Then you'll go middle row, middle column. So that'll be negative 1 times 0 plus 0 times 1. Then you'll do middle row, third column. So negative 1 times 3 plus 0 times 2. You'll finish off with working the last row with the first column, last row with the middle column, last row with the third column. So we're going to start last row, first column. So that's 3 times 4 plus negative 2 times negative 2. Then you're going to go last row, middle column. So 3 times 0 plus negative 2 times 1. Lastly, last row, last column. That's 3 times 3 plus negative 2 times 2. If we simplify here, this is going to give us 2 times 4, which is 8, plus 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. 2 times 0 is 0. 1 times 1 is 1, so that's 0 plus 1. 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 times 2 is 2. Negative 1 times 4 is negative 4, plus 0 times 2 is 0. Negative 1 times 0 is 0, and 0 times 1 is 0. Then you have negative 1 times 3, which is negative 3, plus 0 times 2, which is 0. Last row, that 3 times 4 is 12, plus negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. The 3 times 0 is 0, plus negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. And 3 times 3 is 9, plus negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. So we're going to simplify here, and this will simplify to give us 6, 1, 8, negative 4, 0, negative 3, 16, negative 2, 5 for our answer. For your next example, you're finding the product of A times B in A equaling -1, 3, 4, -2, 5, 0, and B equaling -3, 2, -4, 1. A is a 3 by 2. B is a 2 by 2. Your 2's are the same in the middle. Your answer is going to be a 3 by 2. So we're going to start with first row, first column. That -1, or you're going to do -1 times -3 plus 3 times -4. Then we'll go first row, second column. So that's -1 times 2 plus 3 times 1. Next, you'll work with middle row, first column. So you'll have 4 times -3 plus -2 times -4. Then middle row, second column, you'll have 4 times 2 plus -2 times 1. Next, we'll go last row, first column. So it'll be 5 times -3 plus 0 times -4. And lastly, last row, second column. So that's 5 times 2 plus 0 times 1. We're going to simplify here. The -1 times -3 is 3. The 3 times -4 is -12. Your -1 times 2 is -2. And 3 times 1 is 3. On the second row, you have 4 times -3, which is -12. Then -2 times -4 is +8. Next, you have 4 times 2, which is 8, plus -2 times 1, which is -2. On your last row, you have 5 times -3, which is -15, plus 0 times -4 is 0, and 5 times 2, which is 10, plus 0 times 1, which is 0. So if we combine terms here, your 3 plus -12 is -9. -2 plus 3 is 1. -12 plus 8 is -4. 8 minus 2 is 6. -15 plus 0 is -15. 0 plus 10, or 10 plus 0, is 10. The last part of your notes tells you to use the following matrices to simplify each example. For A, you're doing 4 times B minus 2 times A. So your 4 times B is going to be 4 times all of the numbers in the matrix for B. Minus the 2 times A, you're going to multiply -2 by all of the numbers in that matrix. So we're going to start by doing 4 times B. So it's going to give you 9 times 4, which is 36. 4 times 1, which is 4. 4 times 13, which is 52. 4 times 15 is 60. 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times -4 is -16. 4 times -2 is -8. 4 times 0 is 0. And 4 times 5 is 20. So that'll be your first matrix that you're working with. That -2 times A, if you multiply that -2 in, it's going to become addition. And that -2 times 4 is -8. -2 times 6 is -12. -2 times -2 is 4. -2 times -1 is +2. -2 times 8 is -16. -2 times 7 is -14. -2 times 0 is 0. -2 times -3 is +6. And -2 times 1 is -2. So from here, we're just going to combine terms in the same positions. So you have 36 plus -8, which gives you 28. 4 plus -12 is -8. 52 plus 4 is 56. 60 plus 2 is 62. 12 plus negative 16 is negative 4. 16 plus negative 14 is negative 30. Negative 8 plus 0 is negative 8. 0 plus 6 is 6. And 20 plus negative 2 is 18. So that gives you your answer for this one. For example B, we're doing 6 times C plus 5 times D. Before you even work with this, look what you are working with. You have addition. In order for you to add or subtract matrices, you need the same dimensions. C is a 2 by 3, D is a 3 by 2. Those are not the same. So even multiplying in that 6 to C and that 5 to D, that will not give you the two matrices that have the same dimensions. So that means this has no solution. Again, to add or subtract fraction or add or subtract matrices, you need like dimensions. For example, C, you're doing A times C. A is a 3 by 3. And C is a 2 by 3. Those two middles are not the same, so you cannot do this. You would have no solution. For example, D, you're doing D times B. So for D, it gives us that negative 3, negative 5, 1, 9, 6, 11. And B, you have 9, 1, 13, 15, 3, negative 4, negative 2, 0, 5. So this is giving you a 3 by 2 times a 3 by 3. Your two middle dimensions on this one are not the same either, so you cannot multiply this. So you have no solution for this one as well.